My brothers rejoice, for it seems that we are finally entering the age of FAFO. We had a whole lot of faffing, and now the finding out appears to be burgeoning, appears to be beginning, appears to be, we appear to be on the precipice of a great finding out. We have watched for quite some time now the efforts of Elon Musk and the DOGE team cutting away at expenses and exposing all sorts of corruption in the government ranks. But we hadn't seen any consequences happen. We have the first, at least as far as I know, the very first layers of that onion being peeled back in an article titled USAID Official Pleads Guilty to Taking Part in $550 million bribery scheme. Just $550 million. Couldn't you get something nice out of it? Violated the public trust. The trust. Um, Trust? That's what you're worried about at this point? Well, I guess that there are some synonyms there, aren't there? From the New York Post by Victor Nava, we have the following. A federal contracting officer and three businessmen pleaded guilty Thursday to participating in a $550 million bribery scheme involving the embattled U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. Again, for anyone who has not kept abreast of this, USAID is not USAID. It is United States Agency for International Development. So, a little bit of a misnomer as far as what it is that the media and many politicians themselves would love for you to think. Roderick Watson of Maryland is alleged to have received bribes, including in excess of $1 million while working at USAID in exchange for using his position as a trusted overseer of taxpayer money to direct 14 prime federal contracts to two consulting companies, Aprio and Vistant. Vistant. Now, Vistant, look, this is as exciting as much of this is going to get, right? This is the absolute hogwashery of what the government, what the Washington, what the bureaucracy game is. It's not, hey, here's something exciting. There are 007 chases with guns and cocaine. It's not that. It is you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And we are unlikely to see much of this on the news for many reasons, but the top two, in my opinion, are well, number one being, of course, that the news apparatus is one in the same with the Democratic apparatus. But number two is this isn't salacious. This doesn't bleed. This is just words on a page. So that they are unable to spin this and make it salacious, and certainly unable to spin this against Donald Trump, it won't make the news. Watson, 57, pleaded guilty to bribery of a public official and faces up to 15 years in prison. He's scheduled to be sentenced in October. There is no doubt in my mind that he will not get 15 years, but the fact that that is what might be happening to some of these. Look, if you think that this is the only multi-million dollar bribery scheme that is going to bubble up from the roiling innards of the USAID sort of destruction, I think you're wrong. As part of the elaborate scheme, Walter Barnes, owner of Vistant, and Daryl Britt, owner of Aprio, used Paul Young, the president of a subcontractor used by both Vistant and Aprio, as a middleman to conceal some of the bribes destined for Watson, according to the Justice Department. Exactly why it takes so long to find any of these things out, exactly why it takes so long for these things to come to the surface, exactly why it takes so long once you start pulling that string for the entire sweater to unravel. The three businessmen each pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit bribery of a public official. Barnes pleaded guilty to securities fraud as well. What this tells me is that they had them dead to rights. What this tells me is if you are pleading guilty in this situation, probably there are other things they could have gone at you for. You have pled guilty. Someone explain to me the difference between those words, because I still don't know. Pleaded and pled in the case of law, but they have pleaded guilty in order to take a lesser sentence, or because there were other things that they could have been with which they could have been charged, but they were left off in order to get the guilty plea. So something else is absolutely going on here, whether it is the fringes of this or whether there is a lessened sentence involved. The scheme dates back to 2013 when Watson, working as a USAID contracting officer, agreed to use his influence at the government agency to steer contracts to Brit's Aprio firm in exchange for bribes, according to the DOJ. The good old boys club. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. This type of thing. And look, I'm a nobody. Okay? I was born destined to be a nobody. It's in my blood. There has always seemed to be a different book that includes the lives of the rich and wealthy, the rich and famous, the influential. It just seems a separate volume altogether. How do you make that jump? Well, it turns out, because of things like this, you just don't. You just don't make that jump. X, Y, and Z in this article, whoever these names are, one of them probably went to Harvard. So the other guy went to Harvard too. Hey, didn't we have History 103 together? Yeah, and economics. Oh, yeah, I remember now. Would you like to do some back scratching? And all of a sudden, it's hundreds of millions of dollars between a couple of frothy bros. That is how the strata in the United States keeps so firm. Brit's company had been eligible for lucrative federal contracts as a designated socially and economically disadvantaged business by the Small Business Administration. When Aprio graduated from the SBA 8A program, the scheme shifted to Watson, and Watson began awarding prime contracts to Barnes Vistant Company and Aprio subcontractor between 2018 and 2022 in exchange for bribes. What a yawn fest, right? There's no way you're going to hear about this on the salacious, if it bleeds, it leads news. The USAID official received cash, laptops, thousands of dollars in tickets to a suite at an NBA game. Who watches basketball? A country club wedding, down payments on 2 residential mortgages, cellular phones, and jobs for relatives. Wah, wah, wooey. Wouldn't that be nice? From the 3 businessmen as part of the scheme. Shell companies, fake invoices, and fraudulent payroll sheets were all used to hide the corruption, according to the DOJ. Barnes, 46, Britt, 64, and Young, 62, oh, there's an irony, each face a maximum of 5 years behind bars. That's all. Let's gamble with hundreds of millions of dollars of other people's money, and, we'll just face 5 years of jail time at the end of it. The defendants sought to enrich themselves at the expense of the American taxpayer through bribery and fraud. Matthew Gagliotti, head of the Justice Department's Criminal Division, said in a statement their scheme violated the public trust by corrupting the federal government's procurement process. One of the insidious things about this is there are so not only are people making way more money than they should be because they're getting contracts that they should not have, right? That's the obvious part. But the flip side of that very same coin is that there are so many jobs being done in a worse and worse fashion than should they be done, than would they be done had the procurement process actually gone the way it was supposed to. So everything we have is more expensive and worse. Anybody and anyone who has dealt with anything in government knows that is absolutely true. Anybody who cares about the good and effective government should be concerned about the waste, fraud, and abuse in the government agencies, including USAID. He added, those who engage in bribery schemes to exploit the U.S. Small Businesses Administration, vital economic programs for small businesses, whether individual or corporations acting through them, will be held accountable. Billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk made USAID one of his first targets for sweeping cuts when he led the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency in February. President Trump declared that USAID spending was mostly corrupt or ridiculous. Sure sounds like it. Adding the whole thing is a fraud in remarks from the Oval Office. Musk has alleged that the agency is run like a criminal organization by a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. That sounds like most of government, if we're being honest with one another. DOGE slashed more than $8 billion in funding and fired nearly all USAID employees and contractors as part of its efforts to dismantle the agency. What we are seeing here is the beginning of a new age in America. Now, do I think that any of these guys will get the full 5 years? Do I think that whoever it was that was apparently up for 15 years will get 15 years? No, I don't. Will this scare them enough to never go rogue again? No, I don't think it will. But if it cuts it down by 50%, at least then we're making some type of progress. What we see here, I think, is an overwhelming decay of culture. Now, has there always been corruption? Indeed, there has. Will there always be corruption? I bet you anything that I have to offer that there will. But when corruption becomes the culture itself, we have very large problems, and it seems that is exactly what happened at USAID. I don't imagine that USAID is all that unique a government agency, meaning that probably all of government is grift. All of government is as grift centric and bribe heavy as USAID. Why wouldn't it be? Why shouldn't it be? You know, if you did your entire life's work to get to that level where you can wheel and deal, you can make a difference. And by God, everyone around you, you look around, everyone around you is super rich, stupid rich, the likes of which it doesn't even make sense. They get to go, and you're just grinding your face off, man. You ground your face off to get there. You've been grinding your face at work for years, and you've got nothing to show for it. That is what happens when the corruption becomes the culture. It becomes the only intelligent move. Why would you work so hard? You've worked at some place like this, by the way. You've worked at some place like this where nothing works completely right in your place of work, but everything kind of gets along and no one does what they're supposed to. But it's not bad enough that they close the doors. The country's not doing bad enough that we've bankrupted. But we're on our way. That place you worked wasn't doing bad enough that you showed up one day and you couldn't get in the front door because the light bill wasn't paid, right? We are steps away from that as a country. And we're not going to change it all in one swift motion, but things like this do go a long way towards that. And this is the foeing. This is the beginning of foe, the beginning of foe season. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see what types of articles like this come out in the future and how much things can look just peripheral 1-2% here and there of being cheaper and more efficient. 1 and 2% here and there. And it really could make a difference towards curbing the titanic disaster that we are pacing for here in this country. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button will really help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other people. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, this is the type of thing I do on this channel, so consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.